Welcome to the SEI Podcast Series, a production of the Carnegie Mellon University Software Engineering Institute. The SEI is a federally funded research and development center sponsored by the U.S. Department of Defense. A transcript of today's podcast is posted on the SEI website at sei.cmu.edu/podcasts.
Good afternoon. My name is Suzanne Miller. I'm a principal researcher here at the SEI. Today I'm joined by my colleagues, Angela Horneman and Timothy Morrow, who are both in the CERT division working in the area of situational awareness for cybersecurity. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is situational awareness in the context of cybersecurity. I want to welcome both of you and ask, first of all, what got you into that end of things? I mean, we do a lot of different kinds of work at the SEI. What brought you to working with the situational awareness topic?
I'll go first then. Okay. So I've been fortunate. I've been with the SEI now 17 years, and I've started out in our acquisition group. I moved to architecture, and coming over to security, the search side of things, it's been a really nice opportunity to kind of pull together a lot of different experiences. I saw from the cybersecurity side, a lot of people have been more ad hoc, reactive mode. And so for me, becoming manager of the situational awareness, it's an opportunity to add some structure, bring forth some vision, and try to get more stability into what situational awareness means. So that's why I'm excited to be here.
Okay. Angela?
So I've been with the SEI now for about 7 years. I got into the situational awareness team. That was when there were some open positions. I interviewed and I had interned here. And the manager who chose me was the head of the situational awareness team at the time. I really like it because I really like to help people make sense of their world and understand what's going on and how to make better decisions.
Okay. So, I mean, that's one of the ways that I've heard situational awareness described just in general, is it's the sense-making of what you're seeing. It's not just about what are you seeing, but it's making sense of what you're seeing. Does that hold true when we start applying that to cybersecurity as well?
Yes, definitely. That is a good one-sentence summary of situational awareness, although it goes so much deeper than that.
So why is that such an important topic in today's security environment? Why is it important that we add some structure to how we think about the things that we're seeing?
So I think a lot of people are used to network situational awareness, their enterprises, and understanding that your network has changed a lot now. We see that most of our customers have moved to the cloud. There's changes in software-defined networks. It's all very fluid. So it's one thing to understand what type of security you need, but then understanding, well, given that infrastructure, where do I get my data? How do I make my decisions? So that's why our field's very dynamic right now.
So we've gone beyond, and I remember interviewing some folks about network situational awareness. So we're kind of going beyond that to look at data, to look at how the world interacts with the networks that we're part of. What else has sort of been added to that idea of network situational awareness?
I think one of the big areas that has always been missing in the concept of situational awareness for cybersecurity, whether you're talking just about the network or more generally, is what is it that you're getting situational awareness about? So what are the assets that comprise your point, your realm, your territory, as the military would say? What are the business services that you're supporting? What are the policies and legal aspects and governance aspects that people need to know to be able to make sense of what they are seeing? A lot of that has always been missing. Like, you give bits and pieces to your cybersecurity folks, but very seldom have your security operations teams within an organization gotten the full picture of how everything works together beyond just their security architecture.
So one way I could envision that is I could talk about it as you're really dealing with the entire ecosystem.
Yes.
That has to be dealt with, not just the network, not just the boundary of the network to the world. You're looking at the ecosystem that it interacts with, and not just your network interacts with, but your applications, your data, all the things that are important to your business or your operation.
Right. Without that view, you may be able to detect when things go wrong, which is what most people think about cybersecurity as being, is stopping attacks or stopping threats. But we're in a world where there are so many threats, there are so many attacks on a day-to-day basis, especially for large organizations, but even for small organizations. Without that greater context, you can't effectively respond to the threats that are most detrimental to your organization or could have the most impact.
So today, it's more a matter of prioritizing what are the threats that I feel like I have to respond to. And that is very context dependent. If I'm a first responder in an emergency situation, threats to my network, denial of service or things like that, take a very different context than if I'm a big retailer, who's dealing with more of a financial aspect if I get denial of service. So that is going to be one of the big things that I think is our readers and our listeners are kind of interested in is how do I do that prioritization?
Right, or even just getting that vision. I think that's the part where we're trying to bring more architecture, system of systems view into things.
I was wondering if you were going to bring system of systems into it.
Yeah.
You and I go back a long way on that topic.
We do. But it's all about the vision. And I think understanding what the world is, and this is what we talk about among our team. It's like we're no longer just analysts. You're looking at things. You have to pull yourself up. You're more of a systems person. You have to understand the trade-offs, the world that you're living in. So we're stressing a lot more that you need to have a roadmap where I want to get to. What are my business drivers? I need to have multiple views from an architecture point of view of, what's deployed where, how am I controlling that with my access, who's like my developers, where are they stationed, how do they get their access through the system? Sure. So there's just multiple views, and it's broadening the horizon for our team to be able to start bringing some of that in and having that understanding, because that's where we make our impact with our customers, is getting them to see that vision. That's where they need to get to.
So I'm going to refer back to our mutual architecture background, because what I'm hearing you say is something that we used to say about software architecture years ago, is that we need multiple views of the software architecture, not just one. And what I'm hearing you say is you're applying that same construct to this idea of situational awareness that we need. There's the viewpoint, the legal viewpoint. There's the data viewpoint. Right. There's the human viewpoint in terms of insider threats. There's all kinds of viewpoints that we need to add into this to make it a robust vision, a robust picture of what our situation actually is. Is that?
Yeah, in some ways I like to think about it sort of like as layers. So you start with you have your devices and all your infrastructure and how those are all connected, and that's one layer of your system. On top of that, you have a security overlay, all the devices that are put into practice for protection or monitoring, where those are located, that's another layer. And then on top of that, you have the processes and the analyses that your security operations folk do as another layer.
And then you've got governance on top of that.
Governance on top of that, or maybe governance is really the first layer down at the bottom.
Probably both.
Probably both, yeah.
But I think that's where our customers run into the biggest problem. So they understand the frameworks, they understand the different layers, but we're saying you need things that go cut across all those things.
Right.
And that's where we talk about a mission thread or a workflow to get that type of vision. So if you don't understand what are your basic missions and how do you accomplish that, then how can you ever have a sense of I'm safe or not? Right? So that's more of what we're trying to convey, that idea to people, is get that story straight, and then you'll be able to dig down deeper into your system to see where the right data is, and then what do I need to do with that.
So what are some of the things that you're seeing are being most helpful to programs that you're working with directly in terms of giving them that multi-layered, that multi-dimensional viewpoint? What are some of the techniques that people should look for if they're trying to apply situational awareness concepts?
One of the simplest things that we've seen people do, and has not been done surprisingly in the past very well, is better catalogs, I guess, of their assets. So better asset management, inventories, understanding what you have, but not only what you have, but how it's expected to be used and how they are interconnected. So going back to the architecture piece, it doesn't do a whole lot of good just to know that you have a whole bunch of servers here and a whole bunch of desktops here. You have to know for each of those, what is their actual purpose? Why do they exist? What is the business service or driver that requires it to be in existence? And then also, how are they connected?
So if I, taking this back into something, and I haven't talked to you guys about this yet, but this is sounding to me a little bit like connecting your system view to your value network and to your value stream. So understanding what are the things that are important to get value from the business or the operation, and then looking at how they're connected to the different elements of the system and the different security layers and other things. Right. So, okay, I'm going to come help you with value stream mapping. Yay!
Oh, yeah, we could use that. 'Cause one thing we're looking into doing is more of the model-based system engineering.
Sure.
Actually using some tools. Because a lot of times, all this information is disjoint. You're in so many different documents, so many places. And we've been using some tools and finding it very helpful to get that vision down, and then start to use that to decompose your system so I can get down to that data level and be able to see. But I have just one source for all my information. Right. And so that's where we're going to
the ground truth kind of idea.
It is, absolutely. And you can share that with everybody. And that that's the biggest part about what we're trying to do is you need to convince people they understand what it is they're dealing with, right? What is that vision? I can show you that, and here's how we do that. It's through views, it's through understanding your data. It's those types of things. But using a tool like that is something that we're going to be doing a lot more of to get that message across.
And that technology has come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
SysML and other AADL. We've got lots of different things going on in model-based engineering here at the SEI, but also that the whole world in that has come a long way to where it's actually, I can see it being feasible to get those kind of multiple viewpoints in a model that maybe 10 years ago would have been a little bit tougher to do.
Right. It's not like everyone, it used to be, we dealt with people doing a DODAF view, and they would do one for their program. And it's like, no. And then it was in Visio or it was in PowerPoint, and it's not active. It's just
PowerPoint engineering.
Right. So the tool changes that, and you can have different views for different needs, and that's okay. I think that's a big part of what we tell people. You have to see what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, back to context is everything, right? The context in the military versus the context in the financials is going to be a little different. So, all right.
So beyond the architecture views and using the tooling to actually create a more comprehensive picture that's all in one location, we're also seeing people needing to develop what is commonly referred to as a common operating picture, or a map of the terrain, depending on what your background is. Historically, people, even organizations that have a lot of cybersecurity data, will have them in different disparate locations. They may have this information over here, this information over here. They may integrate a lot of it into a security management solution like Splunk or ArcSight or whatever, but they still tend to have pieces everywhere. And organizations are coming to the realization that that is a huge gap for them. It causes them to have major inefficiencies in anything they're trying to accomplish. Right. So trying to figure out ways to bring that information together in some understandable method is one of the next iterations of how we're improving the situational awareness world.
So how's the SEI working on that? What is it that we're kind of doing in that space?
So there's a few different efforts. There are, from a very tool-based effort, there's some work going on in our security automations group to develop some tooling to allow different types of information to be put into maybe a data lake or something like an elastic stack, where various types of information can all be in the same location and accessed through some sort of API or programming language altogether. From our team's perspective, one of the things that we are doing is trying to help organizations identify what data makes sense to bring together. You don't necessarily need all the data that is available, but based on your priorities or your mission, what information actually would be needed to be brought together for that common operating picture.
So you're looking really, so in Agile, we talk about a minimum viable product. You're really talking about the minimum viable data inventory that is needed to create the picture, the common operating picture. And that's going to change depending on what setting you're in. So this is not a one-size-fits-all kind of a thing. Everybody's looking for a silver bullet, so I always want to make sure that we don't let them go there. So we do like to emphasize transition in our podcast series, the kinds of things you're talking about, the security automation tools and the techniques. How is it that people that are interested in improving their own organization's situational awareness in this area, how can they get to the materials that you have available and that you've made available for use in different settings?
So I know for myself, I always like to go back to the architecture papers that we've done at the SEI. It's a very good starting point to get an understanding of where you need to see your system going. Understanding those drivers, understanding your missions are very key to get that articulated. I think understanding too, a lot of times our customers come and they ask us, we had one the other week, was I always buy the products that's in the Gartner reports. It's in the upper right-hand corner. And in fact, I buy 2 of them. So is that good or is that bad? And I think these are questions that are things that a situational awareness team needs to answer is, to be able to answer something like that, I need to convey an idea of what is that security? Like you're saying, minimum viable product for Agile. What's a minimum viable security for somebody's system? We need to provide that. That's the type of thing is showing people, crosswalking those different frameworks and standards to say, this is what this means to you. Don't just buy this product, but if you do, you should have other products like this. And that's what we need to be starting to transition. We're starting to do that. So there's not a lot out there, and I think that's a gap that we're trying to fill for our customers.
A lot of what we do here is gap filling.
So another thing that we're trying to do is, as I said, I've been here for 7 years. The team has existed way longer than that. But I don't think a lot of organizations fully understand what they need for situational awareness. So we've been trying to document in a more understandable method, something that is more easy to comprehend. What does it mean to have situational awareness? So you have lots of models out there. So you have one by Mike Ensley that goes with you perceive, comprehend, project, decide, and act. That makes sense from a cognitive psychology perspective. All those are your thought processes that you need to have situational awareness. You have the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, very similar. But from a cyber realm, what does that actually mean? So we've been working on some documentation, including a blog series, to actually lay out from more of a layman's term, what does it mean to have situational awareness in your organization?
What does orient mean when I'm talking about
what does
cybersecurity?
Orient mean? What does it mean to perceive when I sit down at a computer? What am I perceiving? What is the scope of that? I personally like to think about it more along the lines of, I need to know what should be. I need to figure out what actually is. Find where those two don't match, and then do something about the differences. Prioritize my actions and do something about it.
Yeah, don't forget the act part.
Exactly. Don't forget the act part. Sometimes, people may think that act is actually you go do something about it. Sometimes you do. Sometimes it could just be you need to communicate information to people. But one of the things that I also like to remind people is situational awareness for cybersecurity. You're not only concerned about the actual attacks, you're concerned about any of those differences that occur in your thing, because those impact your security either directly or indirectly. Because if you have those differences, even if they're not a cybersecurity issue, if they continue to exist, they're wasting your analyst time because they continue to show up. And plus, they often let in vulnerabilities, cause vulnerabilities, increase your risk. So don't only focus on the actual
obvious
threats and the obvious when you're...
Well, and this is one of the, I imagine, like the common vulnerability lists and things like that, they're constantly being updated. And one of the challenges for analysts is to keep up with what are the latest vulnerabilities and the latest methods of attacking. And something that is a gap in your position between should be and is, it wasn't a problem last week, but this week it is.
Yep.
And so that constant updating is one of the challenges that people out in this field have to deal with. And I applaud all of you that work in that arena, because I don't know that I would be able to do that today. So what are some of the big failure modes? We have the privilege of working with a lot of different customers. And so one of the things that our listeners are often interested in is, what are some of the big failure modes that we've seen that they may not have seen yet? I mean, you've mentioned one of them, just not paying attention to all the different aspects of should be versus is. What are some of the other big failure modes that you see in your work with organizations?
So I think Splunk was one that's the easy one we keep hearing, where everybody collects a lot of data. And it's like, well, what do I do with that data? So they have a Splunk pit is basically what it is. They have teams of people, we know customers that spend a lot of money, but they just don't know, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? Right. How do I analyze this? What am I doing? So that's a real concern.
So how do I go from data to information?
Yeah, how do I make it useful? I don't need to collect everything. But if I prioritize what's important to me for my assets, look at that data, and then figure out what you need to do from there.
Okay.
So that's one that's an easy one. Do you have another one?
So another one that's pretty easy is the mismatched priorities. So if you're not providing your SOC analyst or whoever is responsible for making decisions with the situational awareness that they need, they're not going to prioritize in the best interest of your organization. Right. They're going to prioritize either what is top of the mind for them, what is easiest for them, what they personally care about the most.
What they just heard about in the latest vulnerability report.
What they have access to. So that is a big failure mode, is organizations who aren't adequately communicating out the information that their analysts need to know to be able to prioritize what they're doing.
Okay.
So the other thing playing off of that is risk identification. I think that's a big part of what we think situational awareness is to make that aware to the organization going up. A lot of times the SOC people or lower level people don't appreciate how to articulate that message up there to get that to say, everybody has different processes for risk management, things like that. But I think clearly identifying the risk and the impacts to your business drivers, your systems, in a way that the CISOs and all these other people in leadership can get a sense for it. I think that's where we have to help them fix this up. And that's a problem we're seeing a lot. It's all red, my risks in this. And it's like, you need to get away from that. It needs to make some sense. What is reality here?
Yeah. One of the things we run into in consulting with organizations on Agile is this idea of rank ordering your priorities. It's not red, yellow, green. It's what's number one, what's number two, and I'm sorry, you can't have two number ones. Right. And that's, I think you're running into some of the same issues that humans, that clear definition of what's a one and what's a two means I have to take action differently than if they're both ones and I can choose. And that human aspect, I think, plays into this like it does in some of the other areas that we work.
Yeah, getting people to make a decision. Because it's so hard to get them to say, well, this really is my number one. And but I think that's part of what we do at the SEI, because we're trusted advisors. So we're the ones come in a lot of times to say, okay, I think this should be your rack and stack order for you. So that's what we try to help.
And that's part of how we gauge what the effect is. If our rack and stacking is something that appears multiple times and works all the time, then we actually may have something we can codify and transition in a more widespread way. So we've done that and definitely in architecture and some other areas that we've worked in before.
That's for sure.
So I want to thank both of you for joining us today. And for those that are not familiar with your work, we do have insights.sei.cmu.edu is where your blog posts will be, and there's a whole series of those. And this podcast is also one of several, so they can go out and look wherever you get your SEI podcast. Hopefully the YouTube channel is one of them. And that will be available to people as well. So thank you for our listeners for joining us in this very interesting conversation.
Thanks for joining us. This episode is available where you download podcasts, including SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. It is also available on the SEI website at sei.cmu.edu/podcasts and the SEI's YouTube channel. This copyrighted work is made available through the Software Engineering Institute, a federally funded research and development center sponsored by the U.S. Department of Defense. For more information about the SEI and this work, please visit www.sei.cmu.edu. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us at info@sei.cmu.edu. Thank you.